everybody. Welcome to episode of Uncomfy Truths, spreading your daily dose of uncomfortable truths and common sense in a nonsense world. I am your co-host, conservative brother Daily. Great to be back here in this January of 2023. Can you believe it? And I'm joined by my distinguished uh, co-host, conspiracy brother. How you doing, good sir?
Hey.
All right, all
I'm doing
right.
not, I'm not doing too bad. Glad to be able to join you tonight. Hope we can get into some relevant topics,
Oh yeah, lots
current
to talk
events
about.
and such.
Lots to talk about. Lot of things happened. We had our last show last week of December, right before Christmas break. And yeah, definitely as this world gets crazier and crazier, there's no shortage of things to talk about. Obviously, we want to also maybe get more into talking solutions too, and of course, there's resources for that. But yeah, definitely a lot we can at least discuss, break down, call BS on. And yeah, we got it here. So whenever you're ready, conspiracy brother, I'll throw up the first topic we have. This is for me. This comes from NBC News. What the 21 McCarthy holdouts got in the committee assignment. So this is very interesting. Obviously, unless you've been under a rock the past few weeks, at least the first week of January, we finally had after 4 or 5 days, which is pretty much like a within the 100-year history. It's been like over 100 years since it's happened, where it's taken over 2 3 days or whatever it was to pick a new House Speaker. You had the 21 McCarthy holdouts, the Republicans, who didn't just sort of just roll over and just do what they were told. I respect their stance, and they're going to get into we're going to get into like what they actually gained from this. I think there's definitely a lot we can learn from things like this, and some things we gained as a result. Once again, I'm not a Republican or a registered Republican, but again, this is pretty much what the Freedom Caucus did is what the Democrats and the squad failed to do 2 years ago. So I'll kind of get into this and we can kind of break it down. So nearly 2 dozen House Republicans prevented Kevin McCarthy from quickly securing the Speaker's gavel. Some made out better than others in committee seats. So this was actually from a couple of days ago. Obviously, the House news is all the rage first week of January. But as you can see here, the 21 House Republicans who initially blocked Rep. Kevin McCarthy from winning the speakership had demanded big changes to House rules, but they also wanted more influence on the congressional committees that will set the GOP agenda over the next 2 years. While not every holdout got exactly what he or she asked for, some plumbed committee assignments from McCarthy, Republican from California, and his allies after they helped him secure the Speaker's gavel. The process took over 15 rounds of voting. So here's what we know as of Thursday morning. We have Rep. Andy Biggs from California, former head of the Freedom Caucus, and one of the five so-called Never Kevins will keep his spot on the powerful Judiciary and Oversight Committee. He changed his vote to present on the final ballot for Speaker, helping push McCarthy over the finish line. We have Rep. Nan Bishop of North Carolina, one of the 13 holdouts who flipped back to McCarthy on the 12th ballot, will continue to serve on both the Judiciary and Homeland Security committees. Lauren Boebert of Colorado, obviously her and Matt Gaetz are usually the most outspoken of the group. She get a ton of hate on social media. I don't agree with all her ideas, but yeah, they be brutal. But either way, Lauren Boebert of Colorado, vocal McCarthy critic, voted present on the 14th and 15th and was awarded a seat to the Oversight and Accountability Committee, which plans to launch numerous investigations into the Biden administration. She will continue on the Natural Resources Panel, on which she served in the previous Congress. We have freshman Rep. Josh Breachin of Oklahoma, who flipped to McCarthy on the 12th ballot, won a seat on the Homeland Security Committee. Mike Cloud of Texas, who also flipped on McCarthy on the 12th ballot, won a seat on the powerful Appropriations Committee, which controls federal spending. We have Rep. Andrew Clyde of Georgia, another filmmaker who flipped to McCarthy on the 12th ballot, will serve for the first time for appropriations. We have freshman Rep. Eli Crane of Arizona, who voted present on the 15th ballot and will serve on the Homeland Security Committee. Rep. Byron Donalds of Florida, who was nominated to run against McCarthy for Speaker, flipped to him on the 12th ballot, was named by McCarthy as the Speaker's designee on the influential steering committee, which decides which lawmakers get committee gavel seats. And Donald won his coveted spot on the Financial Services Committee, a top panel known in Capitol Hill as a committee. And I do have to give an honorable mention to Donald's, as you know, completely destroyed Joy Reid on MSNBC, which was beautiful to go see. And you could see she was kind of part of that, let's try and tear this black man down because maybe he votes conservative. But he laid down the facts and tore Joy up. So that was great to see. Rep. Matt Gaetz of Florida, perhaps the most vocal McCarthy foe during the speaker fight, who flipped to president in the 14th round, will continue to serve on the Judiciary panel. Rep. Good of Virginia, one of Kevin's who flipped to president in the last round of voting, has not gotten his committee assignments yet. Womp womp. Rep. Paul Gosar of Arizona, who flipped to McCarthy on the 12th ballot, was reinstated by Republicans on 2 committees, Oversight and Natural Resources, after Democrats removed him 2 years ago for posting threats to lawmakers on social media, whatever that is. Rep. Andy Harris of Maryland, who flipped to McCarthy on the 13th ballot, will continue to serve on the Appropriations panel. Harris, a physician, will be the chairman of the Agriculture, Rural Development, and Food Administration subcommittee. Freshman Rep. Anna Paulina Luna of Florida, who flipped to McCarthy on the 12th ballot, won the seats of the Oversight Natural Resources panel. Rep. Mary Miller of Illinois, who flipped to McCarthy on the 12th ballot, will remain on the Agriculture Committee. Rep. Ralph Norman of South Carolina, one of the Never Kevins, who flipped to McCarthy on the 12th, will remain on the Services panel, which he joined in June. Freshman Rep. Andy Ogles of Tennessee, who flipped on McCarthy on the 12th ballot, also won a seat on Financial Services. Rep. Scott Perry of Pennsylvania, the chairman of the far-right House Freedom Caucus, who brokered a deal between conservatives and McCarthy, will remain on the Foreign Affairs subject of the January 6 investigations. Perry won a seat on the Oversight Committee. Rep. Matt Rosendale of Montana, a Never Kevin who flipped to the president on the final ballot, will continue to serve on the Natural Resources. All right, 3 more to go. All right, Rep. Chip Roy of Texas, who I follow online. He pretty much says it how it is. Once again, I don't agree with all his points, but he definitely calls out a lot of the foolishness in the House. Who along with Perry had negotiated the deal with McCarthy, will keep his seat on the Judiciary Committee. Freshman Rep. Keith Self, who flipped to McCarthy on the 12th ballot, on the Foreign Affairs panel. And then we have Rep. Victoria Spartz of Indiana, who flipped from present to vote for the McCarthy on the 12th ballot, will continue to serve on the Judiciary panel. So that's pretty much a basic overview. Obviously, we don't have all the full details. This is NBC News, so you definitely, like most publications, definitely have to take it with a grain of salt and do some more digging. But before I finish this article, Conspiracy Brother, just go ahead and maybe give us, the audience, your general thoughts. Do you think this holdout was worth it? Do you think they got enough of what they needed? What do you think they could have gotten? What are your thoughts on what these holdouts got as far as concessions go? What do you think it means?
I think people who know me well know that I like chaos.
Yeah.
And so it's not chaos just because I like there to be disunity or anything like that. But it's kind of like it's like not a poetic justice, but it's like I like chaos because I don't believe the people, quote unquote, in charge will ever give us peace or unity or whatever we need to be a successful, cohesive society. And so I feel like in some ways I've become an accelerationist as I've gotten older. And so I kind of like chaos because I think that it helps us to speed along to whatever inevitable end we're aiming toward. So I like this. I wish they never would have voted. I wish it would have been, the whole Congress. We would have just been waiting for the speaker. Obviously that wouldn't have happened, but that's kind of like where I take things to the extreme. But I think as far as what the question you asked me, I think it's yet to be seen if this was good or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that because, they got these committees assignments, and we're going to get into some details about some of the things that they should be investigating as far as this administration. And so, if they can get things done, if they can actually, if this isn't just a dog and pony show, and this isn't an attempt to make, because, Conspiracy Brothers is my name. So, I'm always trying to look at things from a very cynical point of view. And so the cynical part of me says the people in charge, quote unquote, allowed this to happen so we can feel like, we can, and I say we as voters, as grassroots supporters of politicians who supposedly have conviction, that we can influence the process in some way, right? When you look at Donald Trump being elected, that was like the, to use a Marxist term, the proletariat thumbing their nose at the bourgeoisie, right? And so what we saw was essentially the establishment on all sides, right and left, kind of, what do they say? They pull rank. They folded in. They fell in line, right, behind each other, right or left, to try to get Trump out of there, right? And so that showed the people, that showed the base, hey, we don't really, you did this, and maybe this was outside of our scope. I'm still kind of on the fence about it, but with this, I think it has the potential to be a good thing if the Republican members of Congress actually do the necessary digging to see the ways in which the FBI, the CIA, the federal government, this administration abuse their power, the various organizations, and abuse the Constitution and the constitutional rights enumerated and non-enumerated or implied in the Constitution of every American citizen, right? We are aware of ways that we are being tapped and watched and whatever. But how have they specifically censored us? How have they specifically false engineered or engineered false stories to create, complete narratives, right? I'm reading 1984 right now. My first time reading it, I've heard a lot about it, heard a lot about it over the years and never got around to reading it. So it's funny how one of the things I've been telling people is it seems like, the political class, the establishment class read 1984 and decided that rather than it being a cautionary tale, right, like most people have taken it to be, what happens when we allow a party to infringe upon individual rights that we are supposedly unalienable, given to us, endowed by our Creator, and we forsake those for safety, for the common good, right, for the benefit of the majority. Just like when they said to take the shot, you're not doing it for yourself. So when we forsake those individual freedoms, what happens, right? Typically it's a cautionary tale. It seems like the people in power have taken that as a blueprint, right? And they've decided that they want to actually implement a lot of those policies and proposals from Big Brother in 1984. So,
hey, one thing I wanted to push back on that just a slight bit. I do agree that once again that is the agenda, but I also feel like 1984. I think when George Orwell was doing research on the book, he was like going to these social parties and meeting these elites and different titans of industry. And I think really when he was doing the research, he got the research for being around that group. So I think 1984 is more of a warning of like, hey, I can't really go on record on what they're actually doing. Let me put it in fiction, because that really started back in the 1910s. We had the global elites who wanted to start the central banks, the millionaires on the Titanic who didn't want that. They sunk the ship. And then a year later, you have Woodrow Wilson, 1913, founding the IRS and bringing in this whole group of elites, the really first sort of face of fascism of these aligning with the government. So the elites saw 1984 and the book was like, oh, okay, they're gonna think it's fiction. It serves toward our karmic retribution. So yeah, go ahead and put it out there because time tells again and again. When you put it in movies and novels and books, the public just thinks, oh, that's great, it's fiction. That will never happen. And then they're planning it all along, behind the scenes. So I feel you on like even when he put it out, I felt like maybe it was more of a warning. But then the elites they look at it and go, well, it's in a book, it's in a movie. We can put those messages out as fiction because then the people never believe it, and we'll keep working towards that plan. But then we'll put it out here as fiction, So, but at the same time, at the end of the day, it is their blueprint still. So I agree with you there.
Well, yeah, definitely. Like I agree with you. I don't think. I think he based a lot of his writings off the Nazi Party and off the Soviet Union, and I mean, even to some degree, I think you can find a lot of the like jingoistic, ultra patriotic fervor in the West, even at that time, right? Yeah. But I think when I say they've taken that as a blueprint, when you actually read the book, and I'm not saying you haven't, I don't know if you have or not, but when you read the book and you look at the technological infrastructure that they utilize, right? Rewriting periodicals, rewriting newspapers and books, reshooting videos, retaking photographs, right? And then destroying the evidence. Like one of the big quotes in the book is, who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the future controls the past. And so you have this concept of creating complete, total false narratives. But because so much of the world is digital now, right, we're not in a situation where to create a new reality or a new history or a new present or a new future, you don't have to find every newspaper and burn it. You don't have to find every book and burn them because it's all digital. It's on your phone. So we can just make a small editor's note that nobody notices on an article after you've written it wrong, right? Or have Joe Biden say 51 intelligence officials and members of the intelligence communities have confirmed that this laptop is Russian disinformation. And every news person on TV repeats that line. Every politician in the Democratic Party repeats that line. And eventually every person that you find walking down the street who is a Democrat is repeating this phrase, that this is all disinformation. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying when I say the blueprint. I'm not saying that he's completely pulled this out of air, but that the ways in which they've been able to implement some of the technological advancements is pulled straight from that book.
Most definitely. Great point to kind of bring that home. And then back to the, just rest of this article. In addition to committee assignments, McCarthy has made other concessions to his right flank. He vowed the Freedom Caucus members would get 3 seats on the Speaker-controlled Rules Committee, which decides exactly how bills are considered on the House floor. And the package of rules McCarthy and the Freedom Caucus negotiated for the 118th Congress was a provision allowing a single lawmaker to force a floor vote to oust McCarthy as Speaker. Some Freedom Caucus members who stuck with McCarthy from the very start also did very well for themselves. Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a McCarthy ally who Democrats stripped her of her committee assignments 2 years ago, won seats on the Oversight and Homeland Security committees. Meanwhile, Rep. Warren Davidson of Ohio, a Freedom Caucus member who nominated McCarthy on the 5th ballot, was named chairman of the Financial Services Subcommittee of Housing and Insurance. So kind of to wrap up here, once again, we're both sort of on the same page as far as being cautiously optimistic. Once again, McCarthy claiming he's going to look into the deep state and January 6th committee, and then also getting rid of the IRS 87,000 agents mandate or initiative. That's well and good, and it sounds good. I just sort of worry about these just sort of be kind of service investigations where, okay, let's say we're doing it, all right, we looked in it for a few weeks, didn't find anything, and then it makes some Republicans feel happy. So I'm once again, even Marjorie Taylor, I respected her on some levels as far as like some of her general going after the establishment talking points, but it only goes so far when you didn't deliver on a lot of different things. And, of course, obviously, like most Republicans, they don't exactly align or have a lot of things within the black community that we could rock with. But at the same time, at the end of the day, he is part of the swamp. He's just a male version of Nancy Pelosi, in my opinion. So we can remain optimistic. I'm just not optimistic long term about this. Anything else you want? We head to the next topic.
Well, I'll keep it short, but I think that's a big point you made. Is he's essentially the male Nancy Pelosi? They're both from California, and so there are still going to be limits to what we can expect without a full mutiny, I guess, of the Freedom Caucus or the people in Congress or the people who elect the people for Congress. And so cautious optimism is about as best as we can hope for. And like I said, it's not even necessarily ideological for me. I'm just like the chaos of it because I don't think they're going to offer anything tangibly beneficial to the American people. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, great. All right, moving on. Died suddenly. I think maybe a week after our last episode, I think maybe the first Monday Night Football of the year, there was a certain game between, I think, the Buffalo Bills and one of I forgot the position he plays, Damar Hamlin. Regrettably, I'm going to lose a couple black points or, whatever it is. I haven't heard of him until this happened. But, I figured it was part of a larger sort of outlook as far as a lot of the people that have been dying suddenly. And a lot of this is tied to the vax. There is this documentary that came out called Died Suddenly. And there's been a lot of these instances of athletes dropping dead or people, young people getting heart attacks and things like that. And now it was this very disturbing reality that, once again, the left and a lot of people are just kind of shoving off as conspiracy. It came home that Monday, I think Monday, January 3rd, where you saw on live television Damar Hamlin dropping from seemed like a very routine hit, falling on the field. And this happened on live TV. Like live stream don't lie. Live TV don't lie. So it's in our face. So I mean, I could pull up a Damar Hamlin article, but at the same time, this just touches on a bigger issue. I know he's recovering, and we don't know all the intricacies. We do know that the NFL has had a pretty strict football NFL mandate, vaccine mandate, where 97, damn near 100% of the players took it. So after at least maybe we could still touch on Damar Hamlin, but I feel like just touching on this as a whole, you have to wonder, like, what was the one thing they had in common? The jab. So, Conspiracy Brother, what are your opening thoughts on this, and anything we should pull up or
Well, I think you picked a good thing to have in the Google thread because it can show you just how common this situation is. But we know the CDC and the FDA are investigating Pfizer vaccines for stroke and heart issues, right? So that's something that we know is in the news. I'm not optimistic about them finding in favor of the people, I guess I'll say, or finding that the vaccine manufacturers are at fault because, as entities, they would be responsible for what happened, right? At the FDA and the CDC and the federal government. So there's that. But I think one of the things I think is interesting, right? When Herman Cain died, right, he was considered like either an anti-vaxxer or a COVID truther or something like that. And people kind of talked about the fact that I don't recall seeing people make fun of the fact that Herman Cain died because he didn't want to wear masks and stuff from COVID. But there were certainly people who used his story, his situation, his death to highlight the need to be masked and to be vaccinated. I don't know if vaccines were out just yet, but when it happened. And so with Damar Hamlin, you've seen again a circling of the wagons from the establishment, whether it's the medical community or the media or the political community. They came out immediately to say it was some whatever I call it, whatever cordis, and you get hit in the chest and you might have a problem, and we shouldn't jump to conclusions. Fauci, when he was interviewed, I think on 60 Minutes, they were talking about it, and he was saying, I can't even remember the interviewer's name because I don't take a lot of these mainstream publications seriously, whether they're on TV or whether they're in print. But he said, I went to Twitter and the conspiracy theorists were going wild. And it's just interesting to me that when Damar Hamlin has this situation, it's like, God forbid anybody speculate that it was due to the vaccine. But if Kyrie Irving had this situation, everybody would say, see, he wasn't vaccinated, And so it's just like even that whole with you could be when you wear football pads, there's a pad on your shoulder. There's a doctor, he talks about it. He said you typically see this happening with baseball and hockey because they have very small projectiles that can direct extreme force, coming from hundreds of miles per hour and very localized pressure, right? He said, when you look at that tackle, now he didn't say what the tackle that it was necessarily COVID related. He's just breaking this down in an objective way, which I think should have been done, right? Because you have too many medical professionals making a diagnosis who had not personally examined Damar Hamlin.
They're just sort of like footage. So you can assume you could just assume it wasn't the vax, but how dare you assume it was the vax? Like we know without a shadow of a doubt it wasn't the vax. Like what?
But so the doctor was saying like the shoulder pad is going to diffuse that energy. So you're not. He said he is expecting to see a very violent hit, maybe an elbow, catching the sternum. But the shoulder pad, right on the shoulder, there's a padding, so that's going to diffuse the energy. And then here's another thing, because I watched the Officer Tatum video where he was trying to break it down, and he was basically trying to, which is surprising, he was trying to shame people for assuming that it was COVID related or COVID vaccine related too, saying when he was an officer, officers they get shot with their vest on and sometimes they'll pass out. But even the breastplate of shoulder pads, if anybody's ever played football, is specifically made to protect against those types of injuries, right? So you'll see this happen more frequently in like UFC or boxing, where there is no protection on your chest than you would in a football game, or you would even see it at a greater rate in baseball or hockey because of that localized item, a baseball or a hockey puck coming at hundreds of miles per hour, hitting you directly into the chest like that. And so this is what you see, right? What are you going to believe? What is likely, right? So the doctor brought up this point. It's possible that it wasn't purely vaccine related, right? But maybe it was damage. His heart was damaged due to the vaccine. And it was also a combination of the physical contact, right? So maybe those two things together caused him. Maybe he had a pre-existing condition which weakened his heart. He's vaccinated, which exacerbated this pre-existing injury, and then he got hit, and so those three things formed a conflagration, and he was injured, right? We don't know, but we do know that they won't tell us the truth, and so we always have to err on the side of conspiracy or suspicion, right? Because we know the people in charge won't give us all the facts.
Exactly, and I think right on the head. Rest in peace, Lisa Marie Presley, along with a lot of other different celebrities in passing. But the thing we got to think about is remember that these vaccine companies have no liability. They have complete immunity. So when you just mentioned there, we're not saying everybody who may have died directly from that died suddenly, it wasn't directly from the vax. It could have been a factor, like you said. It could have exacerbated a pre-existing condition. This mixed with maybe they were a former cancer survivor, and then it restarted a new immunocompromised disease. There's all these sort of factors that we're not allowed to ask. You had to ask us if we were vaccinated in order to get into a restaurant, in order to get into a gym, in order to go to the mall. Yet when these people start dying, we're not allowed to even ask because we're not expecting every press article to say exactly how they died, have the autopsy report attached. That's just a little too much. People don't have to do that if they don't want to. But you at least have a right. You at least should have an obligation to at least eventually report on the cause of death. I've seen different celebrities or people or just even like non-celebrities that died, and then they just say, "Oh, cause of death wasn't confirmed," or they didn't want to release it, and then you never saw a follow-up. It's like you now the vaccinated now put themselves in a position where you're never going to really quite know how you die, unfortunately. If it's a honest to God mortician who's transparent and is honest enough to report on it, that's one thing. But we're not allowed to ask the ways that these people could have died and how the vaccine could have played, just like how a lot of people may have died with COVID on them and not of COVID. There's a lot of people that may have died with the vaccine as a secondary or third factor. But when you don't know and you don't even want to question it, it's always going to be that error of, yeah, you might die from the vaccine directly, or you might die as a second or third. You just never know. And when you shut out questioning, when you shut out any sort of discussion or debate, how are you ever going to get out of your head and your ass sort of thinking of maybe I need to prepare or do something better in case it is a vaccine. But when you shut out debate, you just leave this whole group of people that are vaccinated and you just never know when they're going to drop or what might cause it or what if the factor was a little more involved or not involved. And this is where we're at right now, where you just don't know because you refuse to ask the questions. It's evil.
And I think,
It's just yeah.
and I don't want to, and not to cut you off, but
Mhm.
you brought up a really good point. Just recently, I think CNN's Dr. Lena Wynn,
Oh
the
yeah, her.
doctor on CNN, admitted that the CDC was overcounting COVID deaths, right? So now we know that this is the case, right?
Yeah.
So we can't even get. So, first question we have to ask is for what purpose? What purpose does it serve for us to have been overcounting COVID deaths all this time? Number one. And then number two, how can we as a society ever trust these institutions again? And by institutions, I don't just mean government institutions, but the media, right? Because the media unflinchingly repeated whatever the government told them uncritically. They repeated it word for word.
Lockstep
Just like,
unison.
right. I mean, that I don't know if I posted in the group that meme from the WHO where it says, 90%, 80%, 75%. It doesn't protect you, but it'll stop you from it stops transmission, and it goes through this catalog of different things that eventually contradict each other. And then it says, it doesn't stop transmission, but it stops severe illness. It doesn't stop severe illness, but it stops hospitalization. It doesn't stop hospitalization, but it stops death. And the last one says, it doesn't stop death, or you still die, but you go to heaven. And that's what we have to, that's the
Yeah.
progression of this. And every step along that process, the media never said, hey, is this right? Is this accurate? The
Mm.
media continued to carry water for the establishment every step of the way. And now they expect us to just forget our past, right? And hold hands and follow them down the primrose path once again. I can't do it. I mean, I couldn't do it in the first place. I didn't trust them to begin with. So, I'm not even in that group. But I don't see if that people are going to be able to do it. And I mean, I know I'm going to be wrong, but I don't see how
We
people are
have.
going to do it.
I don't know. I don't know how we get past this. To be honest, it's just very scary because we all know a lot of people. We probably know more people that did take the vaccine than didn't, and we just have no idea with these vaccine companies. Once again, immune. We have no idea how the vaccine is going to affect people 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line. I don't even want to fly a plane. I don't even want to ride on a plane with a vaccinated pilot. But unless like you're like making multimillionaire money. How are you supposed to just charter an unvaccinated pilot? But the sooner we start asking these questions and pushing back against this narrative, the more we can say, okay, maybe all these people died suddenly, didn't die directly of the vaccine, but this vaccine could have triggered something over here. Secondary factor, third factor, you just don't know. So instead of people demonizing it, you need to start opening up and say, okay, it maybe contributed to it on a second, third, or fourth factor level, maybe not just directly, but I don't know what else to say about this. It's just very, very, very disturbing times we're in. Anything else you want to add on? Conspiracy?
I don't know. I'll leave it alone. We can go to the next topic. Well, I guess I will. I'll say, check out on YouTube. The documentary is called Anecdotals, and goes into really good detail about the vaccine and adverse side effects. Interviews doctors, victims. So that's why it's called Anecdotals, because every time somebody would say, "Hey, the vaccine injured me," someone would always push back and say, "You're just an anecdotal case." So it's a video about all the anecdotal evidence that the vaccine is unsafe, and also some empirical evidence. Video of interactions with Congress and different members of Congress. It actually was banned on YouTube, but Senator Ron Johnson, who is, I believe, from Wisconsin, got involved, contacted YouTube, and the lady who produced the film, she actually received an apology from YouTube. So the video's on YouTube. It was called medical misinformation at first, and it is no longer. And then also the documentary you can watch on Rumble called Died Suddenly.
Yes. Great film.
It'll make you think. It'll definitely make you think. Anyone who's died within the last 2 years, I guess that's when the vaccines have been out, within the last 2 years, roughly 2 years, because it was a little bit before.
Yeah, we're in about 2 years on the first rollout.
But it's definitely worth looking at both of those documentaries and sharing them with everybody because it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, and I want to just end on this. Like, once again, you got the biased. They're not biased at all. You can just tell clearly they have, like, we have to shut is a danger warning as possible. And once again, anybody out there, maybe you took the shot, you took a couple boosters, and you're starting to maybe think about it. I want you to ask you this. 2 years ago, do you remember this many people dying suddenly? Do you remember going to Google? Not like you ever Google got died suddenly, but there weren't this many people dying 2 years ago. There weren't this many, and yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. Do you remember this happening 2 years ago? And then ask yourself, why are these different media establishments? Why is there such this weird push to not question, to just don't even ask about that, don't even think about it? So just ask yourself that. That's all I got on this one. Conspiracy brother.
Well, there's actually insurance companies I don't know if it's like a national insurance company association, but they said all-cause mortality rates have gone up 40%. And one of the documentaries said 12 to 15% is an astronomical number, and they've gone up 40%. Okay, so when you get to some of the data that you're going to see in these documentaries, it is going to be mind-blowing. And I don't use that term loosely because the amount of deaths, just potentially, right? Steve Kirsch, who I believe invented the optic mouse, is they call him the misinformation super spreader. But he does a lot of research into the vaccines and its safety. He's vaccinated, his family's vaccinated, but he doesn't like, after having gotten the vaccine, he doesn't like what he's heard and what he's found out about it. And he says that when you look at the VAERS system, well, the government agencies, for typically what they do is you multiply whatever the VAERS system says by 45. So he says there's like 15,000 deaths reported on the VAERS system. And so you multiply that by 45, that's 600,000 people. So watch the documentary for yourself to get the full context of those numbers. But he's saying you're looking at, in reality, maybe up to 600,000 or more people have died from the vaccine. And so, I mean, you know.
Yeah, we can end it there. Yeah, but basically, do your own research. Quit looking at these establishment media that we looked up to growing up, or we always knew, because obviously they have an agenda where they don't care how many people die or who gets damaged and hurt. They have to protect the establishment at all costs. So instead of like Forbes saying, "Oh, look, this is misinformation. Don't look at that documentary." Like, hey, why are they asking me not to look at that? Let me watch the whole thing and then decide what's bogus and spit out what I don't like, or decide, oh yeah, that was BS. But it was BS because I watched the whole thing, not because somebody else told me not to watch it. All right. So moving on. Biden crime. We got a lot of news here. And I know Conspiracy Brother, you got a few that we got queued up here. But we can also touch on Biden. I know he recently visited the border. There's a little BS photo op, try to go in there and clean it up. It was almost like the equivalent of like your mom coming home. You didn't know you didn't clean your room all the way. You didn't do your chores. So you like scrambling to take out the trash, wash the dishes, turn your room around for your mom walks in. That was the sad case of Biden's border visit. Just completely, we'll get into that. But first of all, let's get into Biden. Obviously, found classified files. A lot to talk about with this one. This might not be Watergate, but it's pretty darn close. So, conspiracy, feel free to take us in on this one. If you want to read or first talk about it.
Well, you can read it if you want, just because you have it pulled up on your screen. And I'll just comment. But
I'll read this first one.
I mean, this may not be Watergate, but that's only because it doesn't deal with an election, So, but yeah, you can read this one, and then there's another one that kind of breaks down some of the numbers with the whole $50,000 a month rent. I think that's a very important thing to look at too. But
okay, we'll go back and forth. I'll read this first one. You read the next. What's in here, Joe? Beat up box of important docs was out and open at Joe Biden's house laptop rules. This can't really be where Joe Biden kept classified docs he took from the White House, or can it? A box labeled important photos was left unsealed on the table ahead of a child's birthday party in Delaware home. The 80-year-old president been discovered to have stashed sensitive government records. A photo from his son's laptop discovered by the Post Friday reveals. Infamous laptop reveals that Hunter apparently made over 160 trips to the sprawling lakeside house in just 52 days. During the same time, he was involved in controversial business dealings with Chinese energy conglomerate. And while home contained classified docs, during one visit, the first son, who has a history of drug abuse, addictions, tested mom, aka first. Are you awake? The door, please. 13 a.m. 8/17, according to the screenshot of the exchange. After she responded, okay, I wrote back, my key fell off in the house. I'm sorry. 3 days later, March 11th, 2017, Hunter Biden 52 preparations of his his birthday party, 6-bedroom Wilmington. The event took place more than a week later after Page Six exclusively revealed that the troubled first son was having an affair with his widowed sister-in-law, Hallie Biden, following the death of his brother, Beau Biden, from brain cancer in 2015. A screenshot of text messages shows Hunter Biden invited the 3 daughters he shares with his wife to the party at the Nana Pops. He rebuffed, however, by the youngest, Maisie Biden, who wrote, "We are not ready to see adults yet. Images from right here. Hunter Biden's laptop shows an array of family photos spread out on a dining room table surrounded by chairs before gathering, as well as a white cardboard file box with a brown packing tape on it. They go deep. But the lid was covered with the words important docs written in black. Important docs was photos, had been opened and was ajar in the shot Hunter Biden snapped. It is unknown, my God. While it was unknown what was actually in the box, reporters suggested it may have been White House documents for use in writing his memoir, Promise Me Dad, which was published in November 2017. Another snapshot from later in the day shows Ned in front of a rectangular cake covered with white icing and burning candles as Joe Biden stood to the side and tilted it toward the camera. A man sitting in a cake. Engulfed in controversy. It's a CBS News report on the U.S. Department of Justice is looking into classified documents from his time as vice president, wound up at Penn Biden Center, seeing global engagement in D.C. President Biden's lawyers alerted the feds on all of the discovery on the 2nd, 6 days before the midterm elections. But of course, it wasn't public and spilled the beans until now. Last thing we got here. Yeah, it's going in. Anything you want to comment on?
I posted a video link too of Steve Ducey talking to Joe Biden. It's about a minute and 50 seconds, discussing
the Fox News one?
the documents. Yeah, and so here's why this is all relevant, right? Because the FBI raided Donald Trump's home for classified documents. And classified documents, as far as I understand it, are all classified the same. There's not levels of classified. Mm-hmm. If something is classified and something else is classified, they're the same importance. Right? Now, they have different levels of classification, right? They have like for your eyes only kind of stuff, like real spy shit. And like, so, there are levels to classification. But if a document is classified, there isn't like a certain level of classified. Like, oh, this is classified 1, this classified 2. Like, it's just classified.
Right.
So when you saw the FBI go into Donald Trump's home and completely, do this whole like sting thing, like we got him type of deal. Like right. what, and that's, that's the crackhead, the first crackhead, but like when you have that type of situation, why don't we see this happening here now? Right? What's the difference between a president and a former president as it pertains to crimes, right? Because when Joe Biden had taken these documents, one of the things that like you've seen and people try to say, oh, well, he only took a few and they weren't that important and blah, blah, blah. Like I said, I don't know. When something's classified, I just know that it's classified. There isn't a restriction to a level or whatever. But as far as I knew from the whole situation with Trump, like presidents can declassify stuff. Vice presidents can. So unless we find out somewhere that Obama declassified these documents for Joe Biden to take, which I haven't heard or seen, right? Joe Biden committed the crime here because Trump said he declassified all this stuff. Now, people can say, oh, well, he has to do this big procedure. But as far as I know, again, there's no big, giant ceremony. It's just, hey, these are declassified. So if he did it at the stroke of midnight or 11:59 while he was still president and he wrote the note to himself, or if there's enough doubt, they're declassified and this is all a hoax. But in this Joe Biden situation, like it should be more important. This really, if it's important for Trump, it's definitely important here because this is really a law being broken. Same with Hillary Clinton. What about this whole email situation? It's as a federal employee, you're supposed to retain your emails on a government server for a period of time for FOIA requests. So the fact that she had her own private server, she used it for personal business as well as government business, and then destroyed it without having a record of it for the people to look at. That's a big deal. But for that whole 4 years or 6 years, I guess, depending on how long you look at the election process, we were told it wasn't a problem. But her emails, it wasn't a problem, right? And so, this is the kind of thing that we see that drives people to distrust the media and the political establishment, because we just want consistency. If it was a problem for Trump, fine, right? Put him in jail. But where's Joe Biden's handcuffs coming, right? Because that's the situation. Trump had his documents in a safe in his house, right? Joe Biden had them in a garage next to a vehicle, and he claims in the video when he's talking to Peter Ducey, well, the garage door was locked, and it's just like, bro, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right. Oh, that'll do it.
You know what I mean? Somebody broke into my sister's garage and stole her car. So I'm sure, you probably got a bit of a better security system. But if the former president isn't to be trusted with documents in his safe, well, hey, I don't think your garage next to a vehicle that your crackhead son has access to is safe either.
Right.
And so this gets into some of the corruption as it pertains to was it the first impeachment? When Trump was trying to get Zelensky to look into...
I lost count, man. Be honest with you.
Well, yeah, because it was twice. Oh, yeah, I guess it was the first impeachment. I can't remember.
2-3 times.
He was impeached twice.
Oh.
They threatened to do it for the whole January 6th thing, I think. But he was definitely impeached for the first.
Maybe he was out of office, though.
So here's what happened, right? Trump, the recording. What was that guy's name? Eric Chiramella or Chiramella? They remember that nobody would say his name. That dude who worked at the White House, he was a CIA guy. He worked in the White House, and Trump was talking to Zelensky, the current president of Ukraine, when he said, I want you to look into this Hunter Biden situation. There's some shady stuff going on, and it would really do us. It would really be a favor to me if you would look into it. So the Republicans, this whole thing was leaked, and they made it seem like, he's doing a quid pro quo with the Ukrainian government, right? With the president of Ukraine, they're asking him to find information, basically to make information up out of nowhere, right? Hunter Biden's getting paid, like, I've heard numbers ranging from like $50,000 to $80,000 a month to work for an energy company in Ukraine, something he has no, as far as I have been able to ascertain, no knowledge of Ukraine, of the Ukrainian language or energy, right?
Is this where this article, where it kind of stems from? What you're talking about?
Well, this is what this is going to deal with. Mm-hmm. So with the laptop that was found that the FBI actually had in their possession for at least a year prior to it being released by the media, and some of his phone records, right? It was talked about, I got to get 10% for the big guy, and it was confirmed that the big guy was Joe Biden. So Joe Biden was essentially the president of Ukraine, right? Like that's what he was, the viceroy of Ukraine in a way. Obama set him up to be in charge of Ukraine after the whole 2014 coup. Okay. So he was the president. I mean, he was the president, like the shadow president of Ukraine. Zelensky was the face or whatever. And it might not have been Zelensky right away because I don't think Zelensky's been there 9 years. But, it was Yanukovych, or Yanukovych might have been the guy that got kicked out. It's hard to remember. Petrovich, one of those guys. It's a lot of names, right? But anyway, so he says I got to get 10% for the big guy, and so we're trying to figure out, as truth seekers, we're trying to figure out what does that mean? How does that manifest itself? Is the president of the United States using his position as did he use this position as vice president and viceroy / shadow president of Ukraine to, be bought, right? To get his son positions of wealth and power and use that to enrich himself personally, right? And so what you see here is now Hunter was paying nearly $50,000 a month to live in a house where the classified documents were discovered that, was owned by his father. So the one article you just had up was discussing the what $50,000 a month. This one, if Hunter Biden paid $49,000 per month in Delaware, what could he get here? Turns out that's really a lot of money. So I don't know if anybody's ever been to Delaware who's listening to this, but there's not a lot of stuff going on in Delaware. $49,000 a month to live in Delaware, like you could pretty much buy the state. And I'm being a little bit facetious, but here's an article from, KABC. It says Hunter Biden's claim that he paid his dad nearly $50,000 in monthly rent for the home Joe Biden owned on Barley Mill Road in Wilmington, Delaware, is by many accounts, quote, pricey, end quote. On the website, quote, realtor.com, end quote, shows a 4-bedroom, 4.5 bath, 5,000 square foot home renting for $4,500 per month. So he was paying his dad more than 10 times that amount for a 4-bed, 4-bed, almost 5-bath, 5,000 square foot home.
Nothing to see
his
here.
Dad almost, not almost, more than 10 times that amount for a house. We don't even know how big the house was. However, a $50,000 a month rental home is not uncommon in places like Beverly Hills. WestsideRental.com lists 17 homes for rent in the 90201. I don't know if they mean 90210 and they just typo zip code for $55,000 and higher, with the top monthly rent going for $100,000 for a 5-bed, 7-bath in La Jolla, one of the priciest real estate areas in the state. 2 has several homes for $30,000 or more, with the highest price on Zillow.com renting a house with 7 bedrooms and 10 bathrooms for $90,000 a month. Hunter Biden paying nearly $500,000 a year for rent in Beverly Hills or La Jolla seems about right, but that much in Wilmington, Delaware seems more out of the ordinary. And so that's the situation. So the question now is is this the corruption, right? Is this how he paid his father under the table? Were they paying taxes on any of this money? Either of them. And, we need to kind of get to the bottom of, was this how his father was given his 10% cut from the Ukraine money he was making? Because if you look at $50,000 for over a year, that's approximately, $600,000. And depending on how much money he was making in this Ukraine deal, that could roughly be 10%, right? So if you go back to that other article with the Daily Caller, I think we can look into kind of breaking down what some of the looking into this money might have been.
Well, and here on the Daily Caller, who I follow on Twitter, we have another article here that you kind of cited related to this. Hunter Biden said he paid nearly $50,000 a month, like we were talking about, to live in a house where the classified docs were covered. So, is it illegal to connect dots to critically think? I mean, how much more breakdowns do we really need? And this article pretty much hits on what we already talked about. But there's just more dots than ever. And I also want to mention Dan Bongino. Once again, I think he's a former Fox News host, conservative pundit. I don't agree with him on everything, but he definitely he's really been on the nose. He wrote a book like 4 years ago about Biden's dealings in Ukraine, like the Biden family. He called out this one chick, Dana Romario, or some one of the cronies over there in Ukraine, who maybe 2-3 years ago was trying to attack Trump and trying to kind of lead this sort of impeachment. She was leading like some faction of the Trump impeachment, and like, how dare you look into Ukraine, and all we're doing is providing democracy. I forgot what it is, but I don't know if you know the name, Dana Rubninsky or something like that. She's like one of the Ukraine players over there. But Dan Bongino, he did on this 3-4 years ago. He's been following this development, and he's been on the nose about a lot of this shit. So yeah, I don't know what else to really hit on. Now with this clip, it's a 17-minute clip. To look at within this clip that you think is, or do you think we should watch part of the segment? Conspiracy brother.
Yep. Say that one more time.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, looking at this NBC News clip, it's like a 17-minute panel clip. Should we maybe play part of this or certain area you want me to start at? Or
did I send you this? Or I thought I sent you the Fox News clip.
No, you sent me this.
Let me look at it again.
I could search the clip real quick. What do you think? Yeah, but while Conspiracy Brothers looking that up, once again, I wanted to hit on the point that a lot of people may not realize at its core. And once again, I'm not huge pro-Trump. I'm not entirely anti-Biden. I'm anti-establishment. Biden's just a puppet for the establishment. But at the end of the day, like Conspiracy Brothers was mentioning earlier, what you do one way, you got to do the other. So Trump is a former president. And like how Conspiracy Brother mentioned, there's not 2 or 3 levels of classified documents. There's only classified and non-classified. Trump was a former sitting president. The president has the authority to unclassify or declassify or classify documents. Biden collected these documents without public knowledge as a vice president. He was never a sitting president when he acquired these docs. So that right there, you can't be doing the whole, well, Biden only took 3 or 4 documents or 10. Trump took 100. It don't matter. Hater like Trump, there's a lot of things I still have issues with Trump about. But guess what? Trump was a former sitting president. He was a sitting president at the time when he took those documents or, declassified them. He has the authority to do that. Biden doesn't. End of story. Full stop.
So I sent you that clip.
In the group.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to pull that up real quick. But yeah, I wanted to just hit on that point for people that still can't put 2 to 2 together at home. Trump bad, Biden good. Like, no, look, let's be fair. He can declassify stuff. All right. Oh, I see it now. I think you did send me that clip for whatever reason. It like put another one in there. All right, I got it. So you want to just play the clip?
Yeah, you can play the clip just to kind of look at the interaction a bit.
Okay, here we go.
I've been getting paid $1,000 a month, if not more, just from this app on my phone. And I don't know if you can see this, but it's called
Good for you.
We just actually who in God's name we are. You've heard me say it many times. This is the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity if we work together. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops.
Mr. President,
Okay.
classified material next to your Corvette. What were you thinking?
We're going to get a chance to speak on all this, God willing, soon. But as I said earlier this week, people, by the way, my Corvette's in a locked garage. Anyway,
It's a locked garage.
yes, as well as my Corvette. But as I said earlier this week, people know I take classified documents and classified material seriously.
I gotta check. Do you see when he said that? Do you see his expression? The dude look. I gotta play this little.
People know I take classified documents and classified material.
Answer. I gotta play that part.
But as I said earlier, okay, so it's not like you're sitting out in the street. But anyway, but as I said earlier this week, people know classified material seriously. I also said we're cooperating fully and completely with the Justice Department's review. As part of that process, my lawyers reviewed other places where documents from my time as vice president were stored, and they finished the review last night. They discovered a small number of documents of classified markings in storage areas and file cabinets in my home and my personal library. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn. This was done in the case of the Biden Penn Center. The Department of Justice was immediately, as was done, the Department of Justice was immediately notified, and the lawyers arranged for the Department of Justice to take possession of the document. So we're going to see all this fold. I'm confident.
Kill me.
And I mean, all right, just the Fox News YouTube page to catch.
No thanks. But yeah, conspiracy brothers. So there it is. Any more thoughts?
Well, and so this is the interesting thing, though, because now people are trying to speculate how this was leaked, why it was leaked. And so people are saying that they think the Democratic Party is trying to move Biden out of the way. They don't want him to run for president next election. And
I agree.
So they're trying to force him to be ineligible. And I can see that being a legitimate thing to do. But we'll see. We'll have to see how that plays out and what they actually do. But I can definitely see that happening because I don't see him winning. I don't see him winning another election. I just don't see it happening. So
yeah, I mean, it's not like the country was already a dumpster fire as it was. I mean, this was just the final, batch of gasoline. To be honest with you, this whole past 2 years, and that once again, while this isn't as big of a bombshell, this is still worth touching on, because I think a lot of times be like, oh well, that was one issue. Now this whole other thing blew up. Like, well, you got to think about what is not being talked about right now, because they're busy over here, all upset about maybe Biden's documents or running after Trump. So we got to at least touch a bit on the border. I think they took the words right out of my mouth. Biden's border police is a dumpster fire. But basically, at least as far as like quick reflections, I'm not about to read these articles, but the border is still a crisis. I mean, once again, they fix things up to kind of make it look good, but we still have hundreds of thousands of people filing through. It's causing a lot of issues with the border towns. Obviously, there you have different, like Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, New York Mayor Eric Adams, who were all about on the sanctuary city train, and now shit got real for them. So now they're walking it back, and they're now seeing these very issues at their front door. So while once again the Biden classified Doxgate, I get it. That's probably the last nail in the coffin for Biden, but I feel like that's still keeping a lot of people distracted from other issues such as the border, and who knows what drug cartel or what operations are going on at the border right now, because we're just caught up on the classified docs, which is still important. So, conspiracy brother, any initial thoughts with where we're at with the border? See Kamala.
So I saw a video. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, going down to El Paso.
Yep.
It was like a little clip, and he was talking about, basically saying that New York can no longer be a sanctuary city.
Oh, how about that?
And so it's funny. It's just funny that a border state or a city, sanctuary city, when they really don't have to deal with all that entails, right? Mm-hmm. But when they happen to start to feel the pressure, then they want, he wants to call for federal aid and all this stuff. And I'm not saying that shouldn't be a thing, but you made yourself a sanctuary city, or de Blasio made you a sanctuary city, and you continued that process. But there are too many homeless people in New York. In general, there are too many New Yorkers who can't afford to live in that city, right? And with the economy going the way that it is, there are going to be even more people who can't afford to live there. And so you want to take an influx of new people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to claim that you have such altruistic motives as it pertains to dealing with them. And, it's insincere. A lot of this, woke, want to be woke, or whatever you call it, political posturing that you see from everywhere, it's falling apart, right? It's falling flat on its face. And when it's having to stand on its own 2 feet, it's falling flat on its face. And so, I, there needs to be something done. But
you're going to see Democrats left and right, and I won't say left and right, but one by one, they're breaking away from the lockstep of Biden. I think they are in the positioning process of throwing him under the bus. I feel like they're going to make a run for obviously getting Biden out the way. Hopefully Kamala doesn't step in and nothing like that. But I think it'll definitely be like worst case scenario. We're going to end up seeing like maybe Kevin Newsom is a possible candidate. Going up maybe DeSantis, some other wild card. But yeah, it just goes to show like they couldn't keep up. It was political theater. It was theatrics. Come on in, you could take it. And when you start throwing reality in their face, like busting the migrants in New York, and whatever Biden did, and now they're turning on him, you're going to see them fully, eat their own. It's time to throw Biden under the bus, So it's just going to be definitely very interesting to seeing how many illegals are here now, how it's going to affect our country. A lot of people, the even the fentanyl issue, all the fentanyl and drugs coming across the border and people dying suddenly from fentanyl. I'm sure there's probably some died suddenly casualties in there that probably got killed with fentanyl, but then no one's talking about that, So there's just a lot that, once again, we can get really caught up on these big. But we got to remember, like, this huge thing happened. What are they not talking about? What are other things going under the radar? So moving forward, keep things along. We want to stay on top of whatever's latest and loudest, but also I thought this was kind of interesting. Once again, this isn't like a huge issue that affects the Black community that we got to be worried about. But I thought this was very interesting about Steven Crowder. He's the sort of the more conservative comedian online. He's been around for a few years now. Amassed a huge following on YouTube, Rumble. Kind of similar, kind of like alternative late night, woke late night. Does really different segments, funny segments and whatnot. But apparently, I don't know if you know the whole story about this conspiracy brother, but he was about to end his contract with Blaze TV, and apparently he's had a pretty long, respectable relationship over the Daily Wire. Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro, who were the founders there. So apparently, they sent him over, not like a contract, but just kind of like, hey, this is a term sheet, little conversation starter. And basically, I think his biggest issue Steven Crowder had with it was there was a section, 'cause I watched the video. There was Steven Crowder's initial reaction video, and then Daily Wire did Damage Control. They came out and did a whole 50-minute video where they went through the whole contract. They presented to Steven line by line, which I think is very admirable. There was a $50 million offer over the next 3 to 5 years to be paid out. But for whatever reason, what Steven Crowder didn't like was there was a fees section. It was saying basically anytime you get demonetized, or for whatever reason you lose money getting demonetized, we lose money as a result. So you now have to pay this fee, or we're only going to pay out this much. I think it was like a fees. You got charged these fees because now we can't get part of that advertising revenue. And to be honest, Steven, he released this video. I can't believe this. This is a slave contract. Kind of gave me a little bit of Kanye vibes in a way. Like, I'm pushing back against this. These conservatives are in line with big tech. But when you take a closer look, at the end of the day, just how you got to be careful what you say on YouTube, but then you save, the really good uncensored stuff for the paywall. That's basically what they were mainly proposing. So Steven Crowder pretty much does the same thing on his show now that he would have been doing at the Daily Wire, where they're not Daily Wire is not trying to censor you, but you play the same game where you say just enough that's safe for the YouTube guidelines, and then you save your unfiltered, uncensored thoughts for the paywall for the members. And basically, it was pretty much the same thing where if you lose money, if we lose money, you lose money. And we're not here to just run a charity where we take all the risk and you get all the reward. So after kind of looking at both sides and examining it, I could kind of see where Steven Crowder was coming from. Those contracts can be they can be very tricky and maybe advantageous and predatory for maybe newer content creators coming up, but definitely for people at his level, he definitely had a certain amount of following where that wouldn't have been as big a deal, or he would have made that up in plenty of different ways, in my opinion. And the same sort of strategy where you kind of censor yourself to stay on YouTube, and then you speak your thoughts on the paywall. That's kind of the same idea they had. They were just asking Steven to take on the same risk as they were willing to do financially. So those are my initial thoughts. Conspiracy Brother, you have anything to add on that? Or what was your perspective?
Yeah, so I looked at some of the breakdown Steven Crowder was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like you said, I could see both sides of it. Right.
Yeah.
I think one of the issues that you have, give me 1 second.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to pull up at least a medium mannered.
So sorry. So one of the things it seems like Steven Crowder was talking about. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah,
you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So one of the things he was talking about, because I watched his breakdown, and he was just saying, YouTube already attempts to censor conservative voices, anti-establishment voices. I mean, which is why, remember when we first started, you wanted us to do the YouTube thing, and I mean, we technically have a YouTube page, but I don't upload anything there because I don't think we can have these kind of conversations there, right? The kind of conversation we have where we talk about the vaccine, we talk about, all these different topics. Like with YouTube, you just never know what's going to tick a box for them, right? People making false copyright claims and different flagging your videos for various different reasons, making you responsible as a creator for what your comment section says. Like, there are a lot of things on YouTube that could get your channel messed up. And so I get that, how he looks at it is like, hey, if we're trying to create this anti-establishment counter narrative, where we talk about the way that big tech censors people, and we talk about the ways in which, this whole thing is really a problem for us. Like, why are you kowtowing to them? And so, I can see both sides, obviously, because YouTube is very lucrative, and I think, if we could utilize YouTube, I think it might help expand our reach significantly. We are limited because we're really just on Rumble and Odyssey. But I think with what we talk about, it would be a waste of time for us to deal with YouTube. And so that's kind of a sacrifice that we've had to make. Like I said, we still have the channel. So at any time, we can upload any of these videos to give it an attempt to see, how it does. But I think, overall, I think, like I watched the Eric July. I don't know if you've ever seen Eric July. He's an anarcho-capitalist libertarian, and he makes a lot of different videos about comics and like pop culture and stuff like that. But he was talking about, because like he just started a comic distribution and comic books company Ison is the name of the character, and he's explaining, how difficult it was for him to start his own, because he always talks about the parallel economy. And he's like a rapper or something, so he has like a music group, and so like he explained, how difficult it is to do, and
Oh, conspiracy brother, you're getting the static again. I don't know if it's your headphones or your microphone.
Is that better or worse?
No, it's still the same. It was mild, then it just got a lot worse.
What about now?
Now you're still static.
Okay. Bad, worse. I guess you can't really hear me.
Yeah, it's about the same.
I wonder why that starts to happen all of a sudden.
Are you using the microphone today? All right. Well, yeah. While conspiracy brothers fixing that up, kind of like what he hit on. Basically, I can see both sides. Jeremy Boring, the Daily Wire, they're a business. Business has to make a profit. Also, Tim Pool over at Tim Cass had an interesting perspective as well. Conspiracy brother?
Yep. Is that better or worse?
No, you're back. Yeah, you're good now. Yeah.
Okay. But you can keep talking though. I'll let you talk.
Well, yeah, I was gonna hit on like how you mentioned before, like I could see both sides. And I think Tim Pool was kind of in the similar camp. Tim Pool is a little more moderate center, kind of, libertarian side. But he kind of mentioned how he could see both sides because Tim Cass is kind of at a medium point. He's not as big as Crowder or Daily Wire, but he kind of has his role split between CEO and a host or content creator. So he could see the business points that Jeremy was making, but at the same time, he also saw Crowder's points of being a CEO, sometimes not wanting to work for anybody else and kind of wanting to be on your own. I think Crowder should start a network. In my opinion, I think that's what Tim Pool was leading on. But at the same time, you can't fault Daily Wire for being like, we're putting a lot of risk, 50 million. You have to at least meet us right here. I could see, I felt like Crowder should have made a point where, okay, this would kind of work for me because I know I could weather the storm, maybe take the fee hits and deliver ultimately. But I don't think this contract is the right example if you're taking this to all the other content creators that are behind me or have lower audiences or rising. I feel like that should have been more of his angle, where this is probably a contract that he should probably at least entertain or tweak, but I think it will ultimately work in his favor through negotiation. But I respect his stance on, hey, this is maybe a contract that don't use this all the other ones, all the other content creators out there. I feel like it's sort of such as like, oh, this is crap for me, crap for everybody. Probably wouldn't have been as bad about, but I don't know if you. Especially for maybe being in this business, we might get there one day. But definitely a lot to think about. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. Like what I was trying to say, you know, you could see it as the worker, you could see it as the employee. And I mean, I think that's one of the things overall about us doing this where we do it now. The way we do it with Odyssey and Rumble, where they don't have really any restrictions on what we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives us the opportunity to deal with topics that are too spicy for YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of shows are going to Rumble. Kim Iverson has a show, Glenn Greenwald, Redacted. They do a lot of their show. Russell Brand, they'll do shows, and then they'll have like a Rumble exclusive time period where they'll stream on YouTube, and then they'll move over to Rumble and just exclusively stream there, so that they can talk about those topics that are kind of touchy. So that could be something we could look into. Maybe trying to have more of an organized show so that we can have this much up for Rumble and YouTube, and then cut off the end and maybe have the last piece for YouTube. Maybe that's something we can consider doing. trying to structure our show like that. But yeah, I mean that's a lot to think about. You have a different feeling and a different freedom when you don't have to look over your shoulder, because it's not like we're talking about stuff that's completely out
Yeah, it's
of
not
the
like we're
ordinary.
planning like,
Nothing
oh,
illegal.
we gotta plan a terrorist attack on these leftists or these groomer. Like,
Right.
we're not planning like any violence or calling for any violence, but of course, YouTube, anything they disagree with is violence. So, you know, that's the sad part.
Exactly. And so you're in a situation where, you're at the mercy of the sensibilities of these, you know, as you can see from the Twitter files, just like these sycophants, right? These obsequious sycophants who just want to uh, suck up to power. There were just teachers' pets who grew up and learned how to work computers. You know what I'm saying? That's really ultimately what it boils down to.
Hmm. Yeah, most definitely. And I think if anything, on a lighter note, I think what's at least kind of cool about this is, hey, we're getting some insight to some, at least some sort of baseline Jewish business details. You never know how they do business over there, or I know this isn't like deep sort of like business info, but it's kind of interesting to get a little insight. I know looking back, they're like, oh, why do we expose ourselves like that? But hey, I picked up some tips. I took some screenshots when Jeremy was going through that contract. And I learned a few things or two. I think there's some good out of it. And I think, even anybody black or white, you could pick up a couple at least business lessons on how to doing business with friends or put contracts together. So I think there's some good coming out of this as far as what we can pick up from it. It's going to be pretty bad for them, but just want to hit on that. All right. So moving forward, we got 3 topics left. Once again, guys, about an hour and a half in. Probably maybe try and maybe wrap things up in the next 30, 45 minutes. We'll see how we'll do. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in with us. Episode 11 of A Comfy Truce. All right, Conspiracy Brother. This next topic is kind of heavy. I kind of threw it in here as a wild card, and we call it Uncomfortable Truths for a reason. And this article, I don't know if you saw part of it. This has been breaking out. Of course, the main media is trying to cover it up. And it's very unfortunate, very sad, and something we've been kind of warning about for a while. And here it is on our front door. So I kind of hesitated to really share this article. And we don't need to hit on this. This is the topic I want to stay on for like 20 minutes. But I think we be doing our audience a disservice if we didn't at least give our uncomfortable truth thoughts on this topic. It's unfortunate, but we have to discuss it. It's very unfortunate. Fox News wasn't the first to break this, but Georgia couple, ex couple, they've been accused, or I think something happened where they ended up getting charges pressed, I think within the last day or two, of their 2 adopted boys. They were sexually abusing their boys, and they were pretty much pimping them out to other pedophiles or whatnot, some sort of pedophile ring. So I'll kind of read it. It's very unfortunate. Something we've been kind of warning about. Once again, not the LGBT community as a whole, but we're talking about the pedophiles, minor attracted persons that have infiltrated this movement. So as you can see here, a Georgia couple is accused of sexually abusing their adopted children and using them to produce homemade child porn, prosecutors allege in new report. Zach and William Zulak were arrested on July 27th. It's funny how this seems like this report's breaking out now. I only heard about this in the past week, but apparently they were arrested back in July in Oxford, Georgia, after police raided their home, found evidence that they were engaged in sexual abusive acts with their children. The couple is now facing indictment or federal charges of felony sexual exploitation of children, aggravated child molestation, felony prostitution of a minor, aggravated sodomy and incest, amount to possibly 9 life sentences, according to court documents obtained by the town hall. Both men have pleaded not guilty. Their attorney was not available for immediate response. According to the indictment, the boys, both in the 3rd and 4th grade at the time, were sexually abused by the couple who annually raped the minors, in addition to performing oral sex. The indictment also alleges that the couple forced the boys to perform oral on them, In the other case, other siblings injured due to rape. The documents state that the Zulak, and this is really hard for me to read. This, you don't call this uncomfortable truths for nothing. The documents state that the Zulak's sexual abuse of the children dates back to 2019. According to the report, the boys were adopted in 2018, and the couple went through a now shut down Christian adoption agency focusing on special needs children. Oh yeah, they were special needs as well. Allegedly admitted to forcing couples, 11-year-old, to perform acts of sodomy, oral capitalization, in the intent of satisfying their own. Yeah, man, they downloaded, child pornography. Another affidavit said they filmed the sexual acts. I don't need to read all this, but you could just tell it's bad. And I've gotten this, there's multiple outlets reporting on this. Obviously, not mainstream news media. It doesn't fit their narrative, but there's a lot of outlets. It's like maybe the fourth article I saw. So it's calling comfy truths. But my question for you, conspiracy brother, I'll give us your thoughts. But weren't we warning about this? Weren't we saying, once again, we're not saying all gay couples are groomers, lesbian couples are groomers. All we said was you're doing this story time drag kid hour. You're doing drag kid shows. There is this infiltration, this very insidious group of people, this very fringe minority group. I'm not casting this on the entire community, but there is this fringe minority of pedophiles that have infiltrated the LGBTQ community. And we've been beating the drum about this for a long time. And here it is. And you can't, here it is. And what more is out there? So, conspiracy brother, as fortunate as this story is, what are your thoughts? Haven't we been warning about
Yes. Yeah, so I heard about this story, and it is unfortunate because I think it does play on a lot of the stereotypes, the negative stereotypes that people have about gay couples in adoption, about the LGBT community in general, right? These are a lot of the stereotypes that you have, right? Um, so that is unfortunate. Um, but like what you said, I mean, you've seen this increase in the sexualization of children, right? Even how they've decided to stop calling people pedophiles and refer to them as minor attracted people, right? We've seen this, it's like a sanitizing of what, kind of like previously taboo or abhorrent behaviors, specifically with children, right? With the drag queen story time and having drag queens performing in different types of shows and stuff at schools, and over sexualizing children and exposing them to sexual information and materials, really, and so I feel like in a lot of ways you're correct. Without having more information, because I had heard about this story maybe 2 days ago, and so without having more information about what maybe they were exposing these children to, um, you know, we don't know if they were engaged in these types of these outward. Give me 1 second.
it?
If they were engaged in these kind of outward expressions of, sexualization, obviously they were in the house, but
Well,
were
they
they
had a
were they
little
in
bit of
these
evidence.
like?
They did mention messages, screenshots, like
But I mean, like, were they exposing the kids to this type of stuff, from like drag queen shows, and you know what I'm saying? Were you trying to do things that we would consider sexualization that have appeared to now be accepted as normal things to do with a kid by, a lot of the mainstream people? And so, I don't know. I don't know that. But like, um, I mean, for me, a lot of this, if this were a single straight man, I would think it was strange to want to adopt children. The fact that this is two gay men doesn't make it more weird for me that than if it was a single straight man, right? I just feel like I'm the type of person who connotes family with mom and dad, right? That's just my mental. So even with a single father, if a single man, like, Matt Gaetz adopted a kid, and it's just kind of weird that he did that too. It's kind of a weird thing too. And I'm not making any suggestions about Matt
The
Gaetz'
wife?
personal sexual life.
Is he married?
He doesn't know.
Right.
He's no marriage, as far as I know. So a lot of people were trying to insinuate things about it. I don't know. But to me, in my mind, a family is a mom and a dad. And I'm not saying, gay people aren't a family or whatever. I'm not saying that. But that's just, it's weird to me for two men who are single, who don't have children, to want to have children. Right? It's as weird for me as if a single man came out, Matt Gaetz, and adopted a child when he was like 28. And he adopted like a 9-year-old boy. That's weird.
Like a baby to kind of nurture them. But yeah, they're already like pre-teens. Freaking Besson is a little suspect.
Right. And so, it's just, you want what's best for people, and you understand that with the adoption agencies and the adoption industry, for lack of a better word, that, kids need the opportunity to have stable, happy families. And I'm sure 99% of the time, even with gay couples, this isn't an issue. But I mean, it's always going to be one of those things that's just weird. It's just, it's just going to be weird to have a man want to be a father when he's not a father. You want to be a father to children who aren't your own. Yeah. That's just weird. So it's unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate that this happened. And hopefully those kids can get some type of therapy, because I think they're going to be messed up for a very long time. For a very, very, very long time.
There's any either coming back from this. And once again, I don't want to stretch this topic too long. Unfortunately, this is obviously an outlier. And of course, there's even drag queens that are probably participating in kids shows who probably had the best of intentions. I don't think every single drag queen at these children's shows is like a straight up pedophile trying to abuse them. However, it's still guilt by association, and there's still some insidiousness within that. So instead of the LGBT community early on calling this out, cracking down on anything related to children, somehow some policy could have been done, or maybe there could have been some sort of red flag, I forgot what they call it, red flag laws, maybe something that could have prevented this. These two guys going like, oh, well, they're gay. We don't want to look like homophobic. So we're not even going to question any of the weird sort of signals we're getting, weird history. That's kind of why it was a slippery slope for me, because when this how you gave drag queens a pass for these kid shows, you gave a lot of people in the LGBT community, all of them, just a pass instead of saying like, hey, there is some sinisterness within every group that is an outlier, So I think that the bigger tragedy here is there. I'm not saying this all could have been prevented, but we were just like, no, turn your head away, and we're not looking at different signs and things like that. So fortunate there. All right, as we wrap up, guys, Uncomfy Truths. We're gonna get on this Greta and Andrew Tate situation. This happened probably a few days after our last episode in December. This can kind of take which just wrapped up its annual meeting this weekend, a little global elite circle jerk out there in Davos, trying to rule over everybody. But I feel like this would be a good lead in. So, and I'm sure you already know we went through all those. But basically, I think it was maybe a day or two after Christmas, or maybe a day or two before New Year's. Andrew Tate, who obviously most of you guys may not know him, big influencer online, kind of the alpha male, red pill. I don't agree with all his sort of stances. There's some controversy there, obviously, with his little business he runs, sexual, obviously abuse, trafficking allegations. But either way, before all this blew up on him, he got this little Twitter spat with Greta. He kind of gets into more of a very kind of weak move where he's showing off his cars and talking about how much emissions they give off. I get it, bro. Like, you live in the life, you got the bad boy lifestyle, but he just did these over the top tweets. He did a funny opening, "How dare you," kind of mocking her. And then she came back with his little, email me at smalldickenergy, getalife.com. The left, of course, erupts. They praise her like, "Oh, so brave. Oh my God, Greta, ha ha ha." Don't even know if she would damn tweet herself. And Tate, unfortunately, he claps back with his very awkward video talking about all this stuff, which I knew would go over a lot of people's heads and just look kind of weak to me. And then, of course, he shows some pizza boxes in the shot. The next thing you know, a day later, he gets arrested. Apparently, this whole sexual trafficking blows up in his face, or all these allegations where the Romania, they found him through the pizza boxes, which was debunked. And, now they're just still on a big canceling tour, with Andrew Tate. And I think he's out of jail, but he still has charges pending. And I just think it was just weird. Just very weird, just the timing of all this. Obviously, Andrew Tate's been very vocal about the global elites and their plan and kind of exposing a lot of stuff. So it kind of just strikes me as weird as they found this weird opportunity. Like, they have the perfect scapegoat because he showed pizza boxes in his reply to Greta. And this case just gets weirder and weirder. But I don't want to spend a whole lot of time here, but we can that could lead us into the WEF. But Conspiracy Brother, what are your thoughts on this whole little Twitter beef shit show between these two personalities?
Well, it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder what might be going on in the background. You kind of said that about I think it was this topic. Because they've really been trying to make Andrew Tate be quiet. They've tried to shut him down everywhere he went. And I feel like if he really was very inconsequential, they wouldn't have invested so much energy in keeping him quiet. Mm-hmm. So, that's very, it's peculiar to me. I think the situation with Greta and him, I think, he was just, that's part of his image, is to have an ego and to kind of flex the alpha male thing. And so, I think I would have advised him to do it, but again, I'm not in his position, so he's definitely going to have some different perspectives than I have. But yeah, I mean, just like Greta, she was supposedly arrested protesting at a coal plant in Germany, and there's a video out that appears to show her and the officers who supposedly have arrested her laughing and joking and appearing to kind of orchestrate for the cameras how she's going to behave. So, what's that from what was that from Shakespeare? All the world's a stage and everyone has a part to play. And so, it's like, a lot of times I find myself falling into this belief that I'm just in the Truman Show or the Matrix, and none of this is real, and I won't ever find out, or I'll find out when I die. You know what I mean? Because it's like every time they create some new distraction, 10 million things are happening in the background to make us less free, to make us less safe, And so, it's you can never really tell what's going on.
Yeah, and it almost. Are you still there? Hello.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, yeah, and just to kind of hit on your point, yeah, it's almost like we get that they just been really ramping up these psyops because it's kind of like, why is something this mundane get this level of media storm and attention? And then you always got to wonder, okay, what's not being talked about? And sometimes I'm guilty of that, of not like looking at, okay, this weird little freak show of a media storm's happening. What isn't being talked about? Let me go to Google and look up what's in the news or DuckDuckGo or whatever. And also, like you mentioned, I mean, Greta, I think what I want to hit on with this WEF topic is the fact that Rebel News, I think, is probably one of the best out there that's really, hitting the mark with everything going on. And they even had a session where they caught Greta and they grilled her for like 18 minutes while she was walking to get lunch. I don't know why she was walking for 20 minutes, 30 minutes out in the cold like that. Obviously, she just wanted attention and it made no sense. She could just take a car to where she wanted to go. But, Rebel News did a good job at exposing her for what she was. No script, no preparation. Hey, you're getting grilled and getting asked the hard questions that the media elites protect you from, So I think anything is just a large play. Obviously, Andrew Tate said a lot of stuff. You mentioned first they try and smear you, discredit you, or then they try to buy you off, and then they try to kill. No, first they try and smear you, discredit you, then they try to jail you, then they try to kill you. And he, in all his different interviews, because he's done a lot of press junkets, he's talked about all this. And I apologize, I gotta move around at the moment, but at the same time, I just think this goes to expose Andrew Tate truly is a threat. I mean, once again, I have seen the other side. Some of his apparently his OnlyFans business or whatever is questionable. He has questionable ethics for sure. He's not the most, I'd say the most gentleman person. Obviously, there's some questionable, hard questions you can ask about his ethics. But do I think he's like this crazy trafficker? I don't like. Do I think he's like a part of the Hollywood pedophile ring? No, he's trying to fight against it. In my opinion, it's BS to me. I'm gonna just land my plane there. Then we can go into this last topic, the WEF. So, conspiracy brother, I just need like a couple minutes, but you want to maybe speak on this, the Davos meeting? And I'll be right
Sounds
back.
good.
Yeah. So, the floor is yours.
Oh, you want me to speak about it? So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So every year, I don't know if it's every year at this time of year,
Mm-hmm.
the World Economic Forum meets in Davos, Switzerland, headed by Klaus Schwab. A lot of different world leaders are invited. A lot of different leaders of industry are invited, and they kind of talk about how they're going to make the world a better place. Klaus Schwab is a German economist. You've heard me mention him before. He kind of sounds like a Bond villain or Dr. Hugo Strange from Batman. Like if they came to, if one of those people came to life, that's who Klaus Schwab is. And so they try to devise like the whole carbon tax situation and a lot of this eating bug stuff, the Great Reset, like that's all Klaus Schwab. And so they just wrapped up their meeting. Actually, I think Rebel News, what's his name? I forget his name, but Ezra Levant. He interviewed Pfizer CEO Albert Bourla on the way to one of his events at Davos. And so there's just rich people who like you think about the Illuminati, like rich people who pull the strings and want things done a certain way. This is a very good. It gives a good opportunity for you to think that isn't as far fetched as maybe you had thought before. The whole the COVID passports and the green IDs, all this stuff, like this is the kinds of things they talk about at Davos. The whole CBC, what is it? The central bank digital currency, CBDC, things like that are discussed there at Davos, and then eventually we become victims to it all, the regular people around the world. So it's, I guess, without giving like a completely academic overview of it, this is what happens.
All right, cool. Sorry, I was having a little bit of share screen issues, but I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head. Let's see here. Can you see my screen?
No, not yet.
Okay, hold on. All right, how about now? Do you see the WEF screen? Hello?
Yep,
Hello?
it's pulled up now, so I'll get it.
Okay, so you see WEF Davos meeting, Google search. Oh,
Yep, I've got it up.
okay. I'm trying to master this. I had to go down to one screen. So now I'm a little confused on yeah, hold on a second. My bad. Hold on. But yeah, we can kind of end it there because I'm having like these screen issues with one screen. But yeah, I think overall, um,
Well, if you want to send me the link, I can pull it up on my computer.
well, yeah,
If
just
you
go
want
to
to still.
well, yeah. I mean, yeah, well, yeah. While I'm talking, you can just go to Google and just type WEF Davos meeting. I just thought it'd be a good way to kind of end it here because I think it's always good to kind of start with like the small sort of stories and everything in the news from the minimal level, then to the politics, politicians going back and forth, and then of course the WEF. I think it all centers back to the WEF. They pretty much run the country. I mean, they run the world, or they're trying to take more of it over. So when we go through these stories and we break down these different articles, I think a big thing to keep in mind is how do they all connect together? And connecting the dots isn't conspiracy; it's just recognizing patterns. And you go from like the small sort of thinking of, oh, that doesn't affect me, or I just do what the media said, and then you end up looking and seeing, oh, how is Davos? How is World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, George Soros? How are they all working together? And if we don't start asking these questions and think on a bigger, higher vibration, have these what 19 Keys coins is higher level conversations, we can't expect things to get better if you're stuck in this sort of Democrat versus Republican, left versus right mentality. It's much bigger than that. They're all working together at the top. They're all rubbing each other's shoulders. They're all doing all the backroom deals. Um, I don't know if you're still pulling it up, but like I said, if you can actually pull up, if you can maybe go to, if you maybe look up Rebel News, look up Rebel News WEF reports, and there's like this whole 18 minutes where they're following around Greta Thunberg, and then they approach this producer, CNBC, and they pissed him off. And it was just great to see them asking the questions that none of the media will ask, and you see reporters jump in and try and defend them and all that. Um,
You said Rebel News.
yeah, Rebel News. Let me see if I can look it up too. Like Rebel News, they're like out of Canada. WEF.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe pull them up, and you don't have to watch it now or pull it up now, but yeah, just pull them up. WEF reports at Rebel News, and it's very telling. Like they're doing some great work over there, and they'll play the video for 5-10 minutes just on somebody grilling them with the questions that everybody wants to know, but the media establishment won't ask. Um, yeah, they just do a good job. And see here. But yeah, I think Rebel News backslash WEF reports.
Now, see, this is something that I've noticed starting to happen when I try to share my screen. It doesn't allow me to share a new window. It
Yeah, I noticed that too. That's why I couldn't go back. It was too
Yeah,
full
like you
screen.
have to. It only allows you to share the window you're looking at.
Okay, let me do this. Let me
So
pull it up. Okay, I pulled it up.
yeah,
Let me share it with you right now because I think it's very important our audience could at least walk away with at least the website because I follow them on Twitter. It's really good info. Um, all right, so all right, see my screen?
let's see. Yeah.
Got it? Okay, you see it?
Yep. Yep. I
Okay,
pulled
cool.
it up.
So definitely check them out. Rebelnews.com. They're out of Canada. They just been on the ground all week, asking the hard questions. You know, there were things about talks about some rep from the EU talking about, yeah, we're going to be in a position to, it was some sort of censorship, sort of like claim, like, yeah, we need to have more companies to stop this misinformation, and kind of just saying it openly, and also too, they also had Brian Stelter, formerly of CNN, fired from CNN, now works as a Harvard professor. He's literally at the WEF running as a moderator on the panel for misinformation. So you have a former disgraced CNN host from a failing network who literally got caught 8, 9 times saying all types of misinformation, and you see
And
him
that's really like a
hosting a
that's a
moderated
real.
information panel. Like it's right in your face, you know. But yeah, this is
But
the one
that's the
right
thing.
here.
Like even the fact that he can get a job at Harvard, it discredits Harvard. But obviously because of its history and its connection, alum, like nobody's going to say anything about it. But the
Mhm.
fact that if Brian Stelter can teach a job anywhere above elementary school, if he can teach children, people outside of an obedience class for dogs, you know, everybody else should be doctoral lecturers like Brian Stelter. If you ever watched him speak, I mean, he's like a character from 1984. And it's very
Mhm.
cliche, and I feel like a little bit like I don't want to be one of those people who's like, "Wow, this is like 1984." Every time I see something crazy,
Mhm.
but like he's like a character from 1984. Honestly,
He is. I mean, he's straight up Doctor Evil, like right out of Austin Powers. But once
right?
again,
You
that goes
couldn't you
back.
couldn't you couldn't dream of a better character in a book than Brian Stelter in real life.
Yeah, and like it goes back to show you if they push it all in movies and TV, you write it off as fiction. But when it happens, that gives them the chance to actually execute it on real life. We brush it off as fiction because it was in a movie, but all the while these past few decades they've been planning it in real life. You know, so I just want to kind of end it here. WEF, definitely can't sleep on this. You can still see my screen, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I thought I just ended here. Um, So yeah, that's all I got, man. Any other? Yeah, I think we're good. We will hopefully see you guys our next episode. We want to keep this going at least once a month at a minimum. Maybe at some point we can get around to doing it twice a month. You know, I think we hit on most of what I think we needed to hit on for the audience to know about. And as always, we appreciate you guys. Keep asking questions, stay curious, and we're going to keep delivering common sense in a nonsense world, as I like to say. Um, so yeah, that's all I got.
Yeah, I just say, thanks for joining us. Hopefully, we could give you some different information, different perspective. Hopefully, giving you some things that you can use for your own personal life information, and even the recommendations for those 2 documentaries.
Mhm.
Just give them a shot, check it out, share them, because I think the information in those are very important.
Yep, I did watch Died Suddenly. I still have to watch Anecdotals. So that's gonna add that to my list. But yeah, definitely great show. And we will see you guys as this crazy year continues. You never know what's gonna happen next, but we will be there to give you the uncomfortable truth of it all. All right, so see you. Till next time.
Peace.